When I first got to play Mirror's Edge, I was a pretty young kid sitting in my sister's apartment. I was barely old enough to be infatuated by the game's parkour elements, but too young to actually understand what the game was about on a deeper level. Because of that, I've always pushed the game aside. I used to say, oh yeah, it's that parkour game, that was cool, I guess. But replaying it now, I realized that the game was completely different to what I remembered. So let's use my newfound media literacy skills to uncover why Mirror's Edge is the masterpiece I never realized it was, and hopefully encourage you to give Mirror's Edge its fair try. The game starts by introducing its world through some classic exposition from our character Faith. We learn that the city is controlled by an authoritarian regime that uses surveillance to suppress its citizens. Faith coins it as the City of Glass, where everything is known by the government. Runners, basically a group of outlaws, deliver information that the government doesn't want known across rooftops. Obviously, we're one of these runners. If you're curious to know what extent I didn't understand this game as a kid, I didn't even understand its most basic premise, so learning this was shocking in its own right. The game then moves on to a tutorial sequence that introduces all the basic movement elements of the game, and unsurprisingly it's still amazing. I don't think this needs to be said, especially if you've played the game before, but this game does movement like no other. Its general fluidity is really satisfying, but the versatility and pathing it provides is fucking spectacular. Half the fun of this game, at least for me, came from taking the weirdest approaches possible. I'll sprinkle some more movement talk as we get through the game, so just hold on tight for now, but remember, it's fucking great. Now let's go through the storyline of the game together, which is a majority of what I failed to see as a kid. We start on a standard mission, delivering a package to Celeste, the character we met in the tutorial. After we deliver it, however, we meet up with our sister, who has been caught up in the murder of a mayoral candidate named Pope. It's obvious to us, because she's our sister, that she's being framed. We try to get her to escape, but she insists on staying at the crime scene, assuming justice will prevail. Knowing better, we steal some evidence to have handy for when we need to help her out. Project Icarus. That concludes Chapter 1, and it's off to a pretty good start, at least to me. It has some pretty good intrigue, and the world building is really good, so I'm happy. We move on to finding Jackknife, a former runner who we think might be able to help us out. The police find us on our way there and are forced to escape a couple birds, which are just runner speak for helicopters. Quick aside, this is beautiful world building and characterization, and it ties the gameplay into the story beautifully. Calling cops blues and helicopters birds really brought me into the feeling of the world. We find Jackknife, but he immediately starts running. I guess it's epic chase scene time, let's go. It's a little hard to put into words just how fun this game gets when its movement elements collide perfectly with its story. A chase scene feeling actually difficult, exhilarating, but above all impactful, hits me in all the right ways. We catch up to him, no thanks to him literally falling off a crane, and he tells us that he heard a cop killed Pope, and that Ropeburn, a character that Faith knows about but we don't, is involved. Before we confront him, Faith rightfully wants to try and get a cop on her side, or at least get him to spill some information, so we meet with Miller, who claims he'll sort of help. In Chapter 3, we try to get some more information on Ropeburn. We make it to his office building and overhear him discussing Project Icarus. He's involved? No way! On our way out of his building, we accidentally trip a sensor that alerts the police to our location, so it's time to go for another run. Okay, I'm gonna break the pace of this video for 2 seconds and pose a question for people who haven't played it before. When do you think this game came out? Look at some of this background footage and come to an honest prediction. 2008. I've avoided speaking about how good this game looks for as long as I can. I just can't fucking bear it anymore. This game is only 1 year younger than me, but it is so fucking beautiful. I find that in a lot of recent games, they rely really heavily on realism to create beauty, which works of course, but Mirror's Edge created a way more potent beauty through its design. This feel and style of game only seems to appear in indie games nowadays, which I think is a real shame. Despite having 16 years of progress, not a lot of games out there right now make me audibly say wow when playing it like this game does. Which is really good for Chapter 3 because I found its level design really fucking annoying. I would go into it, but the game looks so good that I forgot about it, so let's just move on. We meet with Miller again, who this time intends to kill us, but we're goaded so we stop him. Let's go, woman. I guess now's a good time to mention this, but these animated sequences are pretty good. It isn't my favorite art style, but they look good enough, and they make the scenes good that would otherwise have been clunky if they were done in 3D. Now we're gonna go after Ropeburn. We get to the rooftop where he's housed, get attacked by him, win the fight in a really cool scene with a stroke of luck, and he confesses that he framed our sister and hired a professional to kill Pope while hanging off a ledge. As we pick him up, he gets shot by some unknown third party. Spooky. As much as I like this scene and the game as a whole, I don't want to give off the impression that this game is perfect, so I'll start being a little more mean now. The character of Ropeburn felt a little underdeveloped to me, especially considering he dies the second time we actually meet him. In the one scene we actually interact with him, he's incredibly strong and he throws us around, and it's only essentially due to a stroke of luck that we can actually beat him, which to me feels like it could be the setup for a really strong villain character we have to overcome in the future, but instead we get instant justice and he dies. I think the main pitfall of the story of this game comes from the fact that his gameplay type doesn't mix very well with implementing a story. A majority of the dialogue in this game is between Faith and Merc, a character who directs us through the world over radio, but because we're moving around so much, we rarely get dialogue with anyone else. I don't really know the solution to this problem, maybe phone calls, but I do know that it's the game's biggest flaw and it habitually leaves characters feeling undercooked. We finish the chapter off with a beautiful train sequence and move on. Moving on, we go to New Eden Mall, and we have a large cop chase scene while trying to intercept a conversation that Ropeworm is going to have with some professional. We see that professional a few times, but they escape using their running skills. Are they a runner? We get out of the mall and we meet up with Jackknife again, hoping to wring something out of him, but we can't. While we're there though, we see a sign for a security company, and ask Merc to run a check on it. Let's head there now. Let's figure it out. We sneak through the security building and find an ominous room. Large security doors and monitors line the wall. We type Project Icarus into a computer, and bingo! On the screen lay dozens of runner profiles, including our own. Merc tells us that the cops know we're here, and suddenly 2 masked people come chasing after us into the compound's obvious runner training facility. Surprisingly, the runners can almost catch up to us, which implies that Project Icarus was not just about stopping the runners, but about stopping them by beating them at their own game. Is Project Icarus going to succeed, or are they flying too close with the sun by trying to miss with runners? Only time will tell. I mean, Icarus is in the name, it's pretty obvious it's going to be the latter. We then hide in a truck late at night to sneak onto a boat. When we get out, the area is filled with cops trying to kill us. This part of the game takes a pretty significant difficulty jump, and it made me start using guns instead of my parkour ability. Call it a skill issue all you want, but I didn't really like that, because the gun mechanics of this game are pretty clunky to fit within the bounds of our main character. We chase the person we saw in the mall, catch up to them, and fight them, revealing that it's Celeste. Apparently she was the one who framed Kate. We unofficially kill her by exploding some barrels and move on. This is another great example of the gameplay type damaging its story. I know nothing about Celeste practically, which makes it really hard to think about her role in the story. Were her actions the result of the oppressive society they live in, or was she just actually motivated to kill? This we never really learn, which leaves her character feeling a little bit empty. We go back to our hideout only to discover Merc on the ground. He tells us that the cops invaded his hideout and took our sister with them. He dies in our arms. We move to the final location of the game, the Shard, the place where the city's authoritarian government runs. We navigate the building, escaping police in classic Mirror's Edge fashion, kind of, I had to use guns again, and make it to the rooftop, destroying the surveillance systems in the process. On the rooftop, Jackknife holds our sister hostage. He tells us that we can't keep living life on the edge. Sooner or later, you'll have to jump. We then immediately jump onto his helicopter, killing him and saving our sister. A beautiful, beautiful, heartwarming cutscene ensues, and the credits roll. I want to start my concluding thoughts by wrapping up my thoughts about the story now, because it's most of what I misunderstood. The story has its pitfalls. Its lack of character development and growth is really annoying, though understandable given its gameplay type. As a result of that, sometimes it's really hard to track the movement of the plot, who we should be trusting, and who to blame. If we solely examined Mirror's Edge on its character depth, it would rank terribly. Thankfully, Mirror's Edge's story has a lot of things going for it, and as a whole it greatly improves the game. The oppressive authoritarian regime enforcing a dystopian society is conveyed brilliantly with really good world building, and the portrayal of Faith as a true freedom fighter makes the parkour of the game feel like more than parkour. Every leap of faith we take is like crossing a gap that has prevented people from attaining privacy and security. Most plot points, though hard to follow at times, make total sense, and they all provided the opportunity for the gameplay to shine. Look back at this train scene. If this story hadn't brought us here, this beautiful and intense scene wouldn't have existed. If you treat this game's story as a text, there's a lot to critique. But if you treat it like what it is, a supplement to a game oriented around its core parkour elements and stunning graphics, then a lot of its problems become forgivable. That's why, in the future, when I look back on Mirror's Edge, I'm not going to treat it like it's just a fun parkour game. I'm going to loudly proclaim that it's a masterpiece. The perfectly crafted parkour elements and graphical fidelity that drew me to the game are, in reality, also beautifully supplemented by its story and world building, which, to answer the preposition posed in my title, is what I missed when I played Mirror's Edge as a kid. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video. It's really fun to make these videos because it's just so cool to look back on the old stuff, but I'm kind of running out of ideas of what to do, so if you can think of anything, please tell me in the comments. Also, I created a Blue Sky account because I have too many gay friends and it's just really uncomfortable to be on Twitter nowadays. So if you don't have an account, create one and follow me. Alright, thanks, bye.